All right, so your 20th anniversary is also like my 20th anniversary being in workers' compensation, because I don't know about you guys, but when I was in kindergarten, I absolutely wanted to be in work comp. So there is paper and there's markers at your tables, so I'd like you to pass these out. I'm not going to ask you to take your notes, but we are going to do some self-development. All right, so today we are covering adding value in workers' compensation. So I'm going to say, it's time to look in the mirror. Because how you show up absolutely matters. I have been an adjuster, I know the job's difficult. I've been the leader of organizations where I know stuff gets pretty heavy. But I'm going to tell you, if you are not part of the solution, you are absolutely part of the problem. I've also been an injured worker 3 times. Once when I was 16, I had a door handle pop through my thigh, not super fun. Then when I don't know how old I was, but 2018, I had my hip pop out of the socket running into a coworker. The 1% chance it could be work comp, that would be me. It was very funny. Dr. Avilas from my ortho was like, this happened how? I'm like, yeah, I know, it is what happens. And then in 2021, when New York City had the floods, I happened to be in a car that flooded out, and we had to break out of the car, and I twisted my knee, tearing my cartilage. Super fun. It was a 2-year process to heal, but this is where I'm very familiar with the system. And I promise, when I say if you are not part of the solution, you are absolutely part of the problem. 2 of my claims went flawlessly. One of them, I literally was like, not to ever be like, hey, I've been an adjuster. And I was like, you gotta pick up the phone and call me back. And like, just call me back. Just call me back. So first, I want to wish a very happy anniversary to ARC. So you all join me in saying thank you. All right, so I am the glitter and sparkles of work comp, which is basically like being the coolest kid at band camp. But you know your audience, know your niche, and we'll have some fun with this. So I'm going to tell you that the jobs that you all hold in this industry are unbelievably powerful and way more valuable than you've probably ever been told. I'm going to give you this scope from a couple of different lenses. But I like to do it with style. I also really like glitter and sparkles, period. I did not bring glitter because the cleanup, which I have learned, is like $1,500 on a men's basis. So I don't do that anymore. I learned that the hard way. But I'm going to try to at least give you guys some humor and some style along the way. And I'm going to give you guys some time to self-reflect on what's your purpose in life. I mean, we don't spend a lot of time doing this once we're an adult. We dream when we're kids, and then we just kind of land in a career, and I don't want you guys to do that. I want you to take ownership of what you're doing and how you add value daily, not only to your own life, but to those with whom you have influence. So, close your eyes. Don't worry, it's not gonna be scary. I want you to go back to kindergarten, and I want you to imagine that the tables that you're currently seated on are those little tiny tables that we all used to sit around, and that the chair you're actually sitting in has your knees like up at your neck, because these are the little kid chairs. And there is a bucket of crayons in the center of your table. Now, hopefully you've already all handed out your markers, but our eyes are closed right now, so we're going back to kindergarten for a second. So what do you think about this? First of all, which color of crayon would you have gone after? I'm a big fan of purple, and nobody can Sienna brown, so you know that one's gonna stay. But what color would you have picked? And when what did you want your life to be? So the teacher is gonna talk about, we're talking about career development day, and what your career is gonna be like. What would you have drawn on that piece of paper? What would you have wanted your life to be? Most of us will draw a firefighter, maybe a police officer, possibly a mailman, a vet, a doctor, a nurse. Raise your hand if you would have drawn a workers' compensation professional. Okay, you can open your eyes, there are no hands. Okay, just want to make sure that you got that. But what I want you to draw is I want you to draw 2 clouds, and we're going to make a rainbow. On the left, this cloud is going to represent your mission in life. Your other cloud on the right side is going to be your vision for where you're going. Now, where the cloud on the right side, where your vision is, I want you to also draw a pot of gold, because that is going to be what success looks like for you, and it's going to be different for each one of you. What do we think success is? And then you're going to draw your little rainbow paints. You need 7. I learned this the wrong way when I only drew 5, and my daughter had to remind me there's 7. 7. These are the goals that take you from your mission to your vision in life. So while I'm talking to you, I want you to think about this today and what that means for you. Are you happy with where you're at? Yes, go ahead and count out those, because if you don't get 7, you get 7. You start with red in the color spectrum, and then you go to orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. I got them this time. All right, I just want you to think about this as we go. What's your mission in life? Meaning, why are you here? What's your purpose? What's your vision? Where do you want to go? And your objectives or your goals or how you're going to get there. All right, so let's start with a little pep talk.
I think we all need a pep talk.
Love that kid. Okay, so we're going to stand up in groups and we're going to all dance. No, I'm just kidding. You can save that at 5:15 for happy hour. I love this video. I saw this for kindergarten. No, it was first grade. My daughter was going into first grade. This was before the workers' recovery unit became a thing. And I was like, I love this. This is awesome. Like everything that we really did learn, we've learned in kindergarten. It's amazing. Just like how not to be a jerk to other people. And if somebody's standing at the back and looks like they don't know where to sit, then we wave them down and just invite them over. Like these are common things that we don't do in life, but make all the difference in how people feel. So some life lessons that we're going to talk about today. Boring is easy. Okay, when you think about workers' compensation, people get their eyes glazed over. They think it's gray and black and gray and boring and boring and boring and boring. Like, oh, you're in work, huh? Okay. I'm here to tell you, you are in the single greatest industry possible. There is nowhere else where every time you interact with an injured human being, you have the single ability to change the trajectory of somebody's life. And I don't know about you, but that's pretty powerful in my mind. And let me tell you, if you don't think that you have that power, I will remind you that yes, you do. Every time that you interact with an injured human being, no matter what landscape you sit in, you have the ability to change the trajectory of their life. So if you do not know me, I was a foster child to adopt. So when I tell you that one person can make all the difference, I mean it. For multiple facets from my life experiences, one person to care and genuinely care absolutely makes all the difference. So when we start thinking about this and we look at our industry and we hear that it's boring, no, it's not. So what do we do to jazz it up? Instead of talking to injured workers like they're numbers or that they have no idea what's going on, we need to remember that these are all people. And I'm going to hit fraud hard because this is my favorite thing to cover in work comp. But if life is a game, aren't we all on the same team? It doesn't benefit anyone when things aren't going well in the system, but yet that's all we talk about, is poor outcomes, or when we start looking at how we describe workers' compensation to the outside space, we don't talk about all the great things that happen here. We have a massive talent crisis in our world right now, especially in this industry. Do we wonder why? How do we talk about it? And think about this as you're looking at your mission. When people ask you what you do, how do you describe your position? And when you say that you do come from workers' compensation, how do you explain that? I remember when I was a claims adjuster, I worked for a large TPA, the largest TPA. I remember having to tell people, like, what do you do? Oh, I'm a claims adjuster. Well, what does that mean? So I'm not very sexy appeal to it. So then when I flipped it and I started running claims teams, I was like, we are single-handed game changers that change the trajectory of people's lives. So when people have an unforeseen circumstance occur that displaces them from work, we are the glue that holds them together and puts them back to work, back to life, so they can go back to being functional, contributing members of society. Sounds a heck of a lot better than I'm an adjuster, or I'm just an adjuster. So think about how do you describe your role in this space, and remind us, everyone collectively, we are all on the same team. Our goal collectively is to help restore the lives of injured human beings. So I'm on your team, be on my team. We tend to forget whose team we're on in this process. And I'm a big fan of being educated about where your information comes from, and I love to follow the money trail. It is phenomenal to me how much this industry benefits off of profits and benefits off of human suffering. So I'm going to ask you to mirror a couple of times tonight. And I want you to think about what is your role in that? How do you help injured workers? And are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution? Because I don't know about you, but I don't really like the idea of benefiting off of people's suffering, human suffering, vulnerable, injured human beings. So things to think about. So we want to create something that will make the world awesome. Restoring the livelihood of injured human beings is a big thing. It's one of the most powerful things you can do to be that ripple effect. And when we talk about why this is so important, one of the risk managers that I had an opportunity to work with for a while, when she was 7, her dad fell off of a roof. This was during the Oxycontin epidemic. He died when she was 11. He drank himself to death. So when I tell you one person can single-handedly change the trajectory of somebody's life, all we needed was somebody to intervene. She remembers him falling off of the roof, going through some addiction with the pills, switching to alcohol, and just never getting off the couch. Here's why this is so important. Terrible story, awful. She turned it into something beautiful. She became a risk manager because she never wanted any of her employees or any of her employees' children to ever go through what she went through. She wanted to make sure that while anyone would ever be under her influence, she was going to make sure that they go home to their families at night. So I ask you this, when we think about injured humans, and we think about the people that we're working with, do we ever think about the ripple effect? What happened to that 7-year-old girl from age 7 to 11? I think about that stuff all the time. I think about during that time period, I come from Iowa where I handled a lot of claims from the state of Iowa specifically. And I remember where we would refer doctors to, and I remember not being as educated as I should have been on that. It makes me feel like absolute shit these days when we look back on that. And you see the documentaries that are coming out right now. We all play a role in this, you guys. So know where your education is coming from. Make sure you're doing what you can. This is where we start to look at how do we actually make this world awesome? And what influence do we have over people? At the end of your life, you will have influenced 80,000 people or more. So that's like walking into Arrowhead Stadium. Is that all 80,000? Okay. What's the sound that you hear from the people with whom you've had influence? Hopefully they're sharing, and this is a great way that you exit on to whatever comes next. But I want you to think about that. You're going to influence 80,000 people in your lifetime. What does that look like? So at the end of it, looking down at your rainbow, what's your mission? What's your vision? How are you going to get there? I do take the road less traveled. I am sure there are people that are like, she's the bull of it. Maybe, but you know what? I've made great things happen for injured human beings because I understand the empathy, the emotional intelligence. I understand the emotions that come from being injured. When I was recovering from hip surgery, I went to go do a single leg squat and I fell and just bawled. I was 6 weeks post-surgery because my body was failing. And I wasn't just an injured worker, I was also a mom. So not only am I failing for work, now I'm failing because my daughter can't count on me because I can't even keep myself up. And you start to go through this because we've got all these balls that we carry with us on a regular basis of not just one identity or one thing that we're worried about, but all of these things that come. And so it gives me a little bit more empathy to work with people and understanding that these recovery processes can be really, really tough. So don't stop believing unless your dream is stupid. I think this world can be way better. The work comp world can be so much better. We just have to start trying a little bit harder. And it all starts with how we look at ourselves in the mirror from the moment that we wake up in the morning. And we can make every day better for each other. So looking at your mirror, looking at your rainbow, how do you add value? And I want that to continue for you to think about that while we go through this. How do you add value to the work comp system? So we're going to a deep dive in workers' compensation. Quick historical background, talk about some stakeholders and some influence. This is how I know I'm a professor. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to tell you, and we're going to talk about what I told you. Education at its finest, right? All right, so stakeholders. We all know you're probably one of these, or you wouldn't be sitting here right now. The ripple effect and the impact that comes from all of these stakeholders is really important. Everybody plays a crucial role in the livelihood of an injured human being when they are injured. So when we look at this and we think, okay, here are all of the people that work in this system. How are we not better at getting people back to work and back to life in a really kind, caring, and compassionate manner? Look at all these people. There's a ton of people on here. Think about that. So again, I ask you, how are you adding value to this system? There is a long list of people. Okay. Background. Why was workers' compensation created? Anyone?
Because employers didn't want to pay.
Because employers didn't want to pay. Absolutely correct. It was not actually because human beings needed a way to recover. It was because it was to help employers. So who did it originally impact? It wasn't the injured workers then either. So I want you to think about these narratives that have helped create a system that is technically still designed for who it's intended to help. A lot of our systems in this world are designed that way. They're not broken. They're absolutely helping the people they're intended to serve. We just sometimes become blind to this stuff. But I'm asking you to flip that. Because the business savvy case to help employers is to get employees back to work and back to life, which also benefits the injured worker. So really, we're all on the same team. Thank you for your background. You get a card. Right. So our preconceived notions, again, we say work comp, and for some reason, we treat it like it is their level. We're like, oh, your work comp, no. And it's not just employers, it's not just us when we're like, oh, somebody got injured. This happens societally. If somebody has a shoulder injury, personal health-wise, we will go above and beyond. If it's a neighbor, we'll, hey, can I grab your kids from school? Can I bring you food? You know, I'm Iowa nice, so like we do above and beyond. Can I take your dog for a walk? Can I do anything like that for you? But we slap work comp on it, and it is like, oh my gosh, did you hear what she did? Did you really think that she's injured? You gotta be kidding me. It's amazing, but it is a preconceived societal notion that we have continued to perpetuate. Somebody has a disability claim, we'll still go above and beyond. If it's Medicare, Medicaid, we go above and beyond. We slap work comp on it, and it's instantly like, let her. Amazing. So I'm asking you guys to start flipping the script, and the way that that works is by how we start talking about it. Because people listen. This is where our whole negativity bias and how our brain is wired. We like to assimilate to that negativity. It's kind of how we've stayed alive as long as we have. But then we look at the societal messaging of what goes on in media, and I love seeing the commercials. I don't love, but I love seeing the commercials on Hulu where they're like, the insurance companies are out to get you. And I'm like, no, I've never worked for an insurance company that's out to get people. I've worked at the insurance companies to help make people's lives better. We just do it more efficiently and effectively. It helps the injured human being, and it also saves our employers money, and our company makes money in the process. It's all tied together because we're all on the same team. Fascinating. Again, when people don't have great recoveries, don't understand this because it doesn't benefit anyone. So again, societal messaging, nobody ever said it was great. And then you got the whole, my brother's cousin's friend's mom's sister got a $70,000 payout, or a $300,000 payout. And then we hear this, but then you didn't know that there was like a $280,000 hospital bill. Or there's all these other factors that could go into play. It's just amazing when that happens. So negativity bias, this whole 80-20 rule, where 80% of things go well in life, but we don't talk about it. Then there's the 20% that we're gonna talk about for the rest of our lives. You all know the claims. Everybody's got a claim in here that they can think of that we have talked about for years. Now, we don't talk about the other ones that have gone incredibly well, easy, you name it. We talk about the ones that are very difficult and challenging. And then we like to tell people that it's fraud. Oh, God, I love this. Love when we get the fraud talk. All right, impact and influence. This is where I want you to think of a good claim that you've gotten to work on. And somebody that was grateful and really was happy to have their life restored. How have we worked on that? And why don't we talk about that more? I've got a couple examples that I'll give you guys shortly of some ones that have gone incredibly well because I want you guys to start thinking about the good things. This isn't anything new. This is like why doing 3 good things during a day makes your life happier. You have a different lens. So why are we doing that in this space? All right. But Claire, there's so much fraud. Guess what? Statistically, that's not true. Injured human beings are not the ones committing work comp fraud. Literally, I have 8 studies for you that were just verified by the Department of Labor in Nevada, because they also told us their legal team checks. No. I'll tell you exactly how this happens and why we got there. Hard fraud, somebody coming into work and saying, I broke my leg, I hurt my shoulder, I did this at work when it didn't happen. No, 1 to 2%. That happens 1 to 2% of the time. Human beings do not inherently wake up and think, I'm gonna go get injured at work today. No. But yet we talk about it all the time. And I'm sorry if there's any of my SIU investigation friends in here. I know you wanna go toe to toe with me, and we will. Because I'm ready. Okay, where does insurance fraud come from in work comp? Payroll is a huge factor. Misclassification of employees, huge factor. Data breaches, cyber breaches, when we're gonna issue a check electronically to a hospital and we're gonna batch pay the $25 million, and then a cyber guy comes and snags it, that's where we're seeing this. So when we go dollar for dollar and we say it's because injured human beings are lying, blah, 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 no, nope. This is why I love being a research nerd and a professor. Show me the data and the statistics to support it. I want objective fact. And again, these are always done through a lens, follow the paper trail, be good consumers of information. Be educated consumers of information. Educated. That's all I'm asking. Now, soft fraud is a real thing. Okay? We talk about this as like people malinger. So I want you to think, when you thought of people that were committing fraud in workers' compensation, were you like, oh, that person's malingering, I don't really trust them. Why? I just want you to think about this, and I want you to think about it from your lens. And my PT people, you get a different view, because you kind of become everybody's therapist too, or at least my physical therapist at SAP, where I'm like, oh, let me tell you about everything in my life. And I'm like, no, just do your squats, stop talking. So this is where we gotta have accountability that's in place on this. What have we done? Where does the responsibility lie? So I'm asking you to look at yourself and how do you talk about injured human beings? I used to sit when I was a claims leader, I always sat in the middle of my adjusting teams. I'm sure they loved it. But I corrected every time that anyone would talk shit about one of our injured workers. Because it bothers me. These are human beings, they're family members, and I've been one. So I'm sure that stuff gets talked about me too. But we're all human beings, and this is where we've got to think about, it has nothing to do with the system, and it actually has everything to do with us. Like, I'm the problem, it's me. And throw that out to Taylor Swift. Apparently she's become very popular down here. But what if we got to be better communicators, we got to be a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more empathetic, and we started to actually understand what's going on in the mind of injured workers throughout this so that we could take a more comprehensive approach to workers' comp. Because I'll tell you, when you get that letter, it's like the state statute says blah, 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 blah. Nobody sends you a letter that's like, hey, I'm really sorry you got injured. Here's what we're gonna do to help you get better and go through this process. Instead, we send these letters out that are like, here's the state statute, 8539, blah, 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 blah. And nobody can read it. When I did my doctoral dissertation, we had to have things written at an 8th grade level. Does anyone think that the work comp statutes in our states are at an 8th grade level? Absolutely not. But again, the system is designed the way it's supposed to be, or we would have changed it by now. I want you to think about that too. It's an unpopular opinion, I'm sure I'm gonna catch one before at some point. All right. Humans are complicated. This means you too. We're all complicated. All right, we can hold multiple emotions at the same time with dealing with everything going on. Things can have an emotional response and you understand that there's an objective response. You'll think, okay, I feel really bad about this, but all right, here's what I have to do anyway. We can hold things in a space where 2 things can be true. We also can be multifunctional, multidimensional. Things happen. So the life force pyramid that comes into play. This is where we figure out when we start to feel stressed, because I want to talk about the frog component a little bit more. The life force pyramid. How you feel about yourself is made up of this. This is from Stutz on Netflix. It's with Jonah Hill and his therapist. And this is phenomenal because we hear a lot about this in burnout too. Physical body, how we feel, is made up, 85% of how we feel is made up of our movement and our nutrition and our sleep. When we start to get stressed, what are the first 3 things that go? And think about this for yourself. When you start to feel stressed or things go haywire in your own life, what goes? We stop working out. Our nutrition usually ends up going a little bit more peanut M&Ms, chips, you name it, whatever's easy to grab, and our sleep usually suffers. Yet those are the 3 most important things for us to continue as humans to complete the stress cycle and feel good about ourselves. When someone gets injured, what are the first 3 things that go? And I will tell you guys this because I'm living proof of this. I went from running 3 miles a day to having a knee injury in 2021, and then I was sedentary for 2 years. I gained a ridiculous amount of weight, and the stress in my life went, it was gross. When I look back, it's not very fun. But think about the movement component. So I ended up tearing out my knee, and they're like, no more running, gotta wait till you get surgery. It took a year to get surgery approved because the work comp system is super fabulous, even if you know it. So movement, and I'm not talking about just going to the gym and exercising, like movement, just walking around, taking the dog on a walk, playing with your kids. Movement gets impacted when an injured worker is affected. And then nutrition's not always great. One, we've got to look at it from a socioeconomic standpoint. If someone's displaced from work and they don't have the consistent paycheck, maybe we don't have a familial support that they need, that can be impacted. And if we put anybody on pain meds, anti-inflammatories, you name it, let's polyfill pills, good luck sleeping. But again, everything's fraudulent. It's all fraudulent. Okay, but again, how people feel about their lives, their bodies, what's physiologically going to happen to somebody. These are the basics. Then we remove somebody from work, and now we're going to have to look at what happens to their connections. Does anyone here have a best friend at work? Or somebody that you talk to on a regular basis that's like your person?
Nope.
Yeah. It's a big deal. The Gallup Q12 identifies employee engagement. The number 7 tool that identifying employee engagement is if you have a close confidant at work. So now we've removed an injured worker from work. Their physical body is thin. And then how do you feel about your sense of self at that point? I put it right up there because journaling is supposed to really help this. Things to think about. So then we look at the why. What's your why? Why are you in the system? So when we look at what's going on with an injured human being, a why is a person's identity. And you don't have to raise your hand, but if you've ever been laid off, that feels awful. I've been laid off before. My identity suffered really badly. It's why when I teach students now, I ask them who they are. You can't identify yourself by your affiliation to any sports, no philanthropic events. I don't care who you are in your family, who are you at your core? And I want you to think how would you answer that? If you're looking at your rainbow, who are you at your core when you take away your career first? Who are you? What do you stand for? All right, so we take an injured worker out of that. Right? So they're not at their work anymore. They're not able to accomplish tasks and get that sense of self-actualization, purpose, meaning. Then we look at how that impacts their life. Your habits change as a result of that. So if you are not happy with your life right now, your life outcomes, check your habits and then go back to your identity. So again, it's looking at this from the lens of an injured worker. We've removed you from the workplace. You're not able to move. Your nutrition suffering. We've popped you full of pills so you can't sleep great at night. And what happens to your habits? And it's weird because I'm having those like epiphany moments right now where I'm like, oh, that's what happened in my plan. I mean, I know this. I talked to you guys about this, but it's real. When we look at outcomes. So when we look at what is going on with an injured worker, what do their outcomes look like? We got to flip it back. How are they feeling their identity? What does their home life look like? How good do they feel with their human connections? What is the movement? What does the physicality look like in their life? What about nutrition, sleep, etc.? We think about the why, the how, to the what, and how that all is impacted. So again, we each have about 7 things that we're thinking about. So while you guys are living the dream with me right now, I'm sure I'm your full focal point. Some of you are thinking about, when can I get another beer? What is the food for tonight? Did I let my dog out? Hopefully my kids are okay. I forgot to pay that bill. I probably should do that. Do I remember where I parked? We've got 7 things on a regular basis. All right, so when somebody gets injured, those are all still in existence, and now you have to figure out how to do it while you're injured. So if you had a family vacation planned, how's that going to be impacted? If you have a child that's in sports, how are you going to get there? If you're on crutches, how are you going to climb those bleachers? Now those 7 balls end up having a heavier weight because we have to add in this injured element. And what happens is a lot of times people get emotionally hijacked. This is where your feeling brain takes over your thinking brain, and if you don't think this has happened to you, if you've ever gotten in a fight with your partner, or maybe a relationship in the past, and you are done productivity-wise for the day, it's because you've been emotionally hijacked. Your brain overwhelms itself with emotion, and it stops you from being able to be productive. How this applies to injured workers. So let's say Tanya is my employee, or I'm Tanya's employee, I get injured. And then I don't hear from her again. She's my direct supervisor, and I don't hear from her. I also don't hear from the rest of my team anymore either, because it's work comp. Don't talk to them, they've been injured. It's work comp. So now I worry that I don't have my job, my team's mad at me, somebody's got to fill in for what I had to do. I knew there were all these things coming up, and now I start to get really nervous. I haven't got a paycheck, who's supposed to pay me, what doctors am I supposed to see? I'm not hearing back, but Tanya did what she was supposed to do, and she reported it to HR. And then most of the time, leaders are out, even though the direct leader is the most imperative person in the work conundrum. And then we wonder what happens. So feeling brain is now starting to overwhelm. We do this a lot. If you text or email somebody and they don't email you back, we take it personally. We're like, well, they're not responding to me. Well, why aren't they responding? Okay, you text, or you call, and they don't respond, and we start to be like, hey, did I do something? Is it my fault? Did I forget your birthday? Did I forget something? When really they might just be on vacation, or maybe they have good boundaries and they're not really in the mood to respond. But we take it personally, we personalize it when we really just emotionally hijack ourselves. So now we're starting to build some stress, and I'm gonna give a little trigger warning here that as I talk through this, you might also feel some of these symptoms. So when we talk about stress, everyone felt stress. This is healthy. Stress is healthy, helps keep us alive. And also, chronic stress is not great. So we have no communication going on from our employer side, or minimal. We have statute language coming at us, no idea where our next paycheck's coming from, or what it's gonna look like, how we're gonna be working with our teams, what that's gonna look like moving forward, where's the paycheck, et cetera. How do I get my kids where they need to go? A plethora of things. So we start to feel some stress. So stress, is designed to help us. But then the stress cycle doesn't always get completed. So what happens just physiologically? Epinephrine is gonna push into those muscles, and when you get tight, like if I ask some of you guys to come up here and speak and finish my presentation for me, Camille, if you wanna come up here, she'd be like, no, no. But people get that tight chest, you start to feel your muscles tight. Well, your immunity decreases, your digestion slows. So not only were we already having a nutritional issue with our life force pyramid, but now, once stress is getting added into the mix, now our growth, digestion, and reproduction is slowed too. And our immunity is going down. So it's just a lovely scenario. So if we are not completing our stress cycle, which a lot of times we're not in workers' compensation, so we've got an injured worker that's at home, our life force pyramid has gone downhill. And now we start to see these things that are basically keeping the body inflamed. So we talk about this and we say that somebody's malingering, but I'm going to question that and say, what else is going on that's keeping that body inflamed? Because if the body's inflamed, the body can't heal. So what else is going on? There's so much between our brain and our physical body that if you tell me this guy's malingering, I'm gonna wanna know, was a payment ever missed on his claim? Did he ever get a medical bill sent to his house that should have actually gone to the adjuster? When's the last time their direct leaders talked to them? You can follow the root cause, and instead, we say they're malingering, and we call it fraud. When really, there's probably a better reason to what's going on. And then do they take advantage of the system? Some do, absolutely. But what if we actually turn the mirror on ourselves and realized, oh, I missed a payment to somebody. Okay, if you've ever missed a payment to an injured worker, what did you do afterwards? Because there was that accountability piece. Did you tell them that you were sorry? And then that, hey, I'm gonna make sure it doesn't happen again, here's what I'm gonna do the day before your check is released, I'm gonna email you and let you know what amount it is for, the dates that it's for, and let you know it's coming. There's a lot of really easy communication ways that we can help alleviate the stress cycle for people. Checking in with those employers and saying, hey, when's the last time you've actually talked to Joe? Is he doing okay? When's the last time the team's reached out? I'm not asking you to ask for a copy of his medical records, I'm literally just asking you to check in and see if he's doing okay. Things to think about, but no, it's fraud. It's fraud. All right, we're looking for values in workers' compensation. Communication is the foundation of trust. How do you build trust? We have to talk to people to build trust. Our system is not designed for us to be trusted. You know, we are sending people the statute language that's hard to process and understand. Do we actually walk people through this process? They fill out so many forms throughout this process. Who's helping them walk through this whole thing? And do we take the time? And as an adjuster, we had 24 hours to make our contacts. I hate when people do this, where they're like, hey, hi, my name's Sarah, I'm going to be your claims adjuster, I'm going to take a recorded statement from you. Did we ask the injured worker if they're in an okay spot for us to talk right now? And I say that because sometimes they're in the ER, sometimes they're trying to wait to get to the occupational doctor, and if you take time with injured human beings on the front end to explain things, for example, giving them 3 pieces of information and then checking for understanding, you can actually get way farther where they're not going to keep calling you with questions because you've taken the time on the front end to help them understand the process. But sometimes we want to do it on our timeline. Like we expect people to get healed and back to work, back to life on our timeline. Which, guidelines are great, but what's going on? And how much accountability have we taken on ourselves? So looking down at your rainbow, where's the accountability lie for yourself? And is there someone that you might have dropped the ball on? What do you do moving forward with that? We are hardwired for human connection, especially when we feel vulnerability. We need to know that it's going to be okay. We need to know that somebody cares. Just one person. This is where you've got the most powerful elements, and you can be the one single person that impacts somebody's life and changes the trajectory. It is everyone's fundamental being to belong. These are hard, this is why we had tribes back then. This goes back so far. This is where our Homo sapien brain comes in. We are a tribe mentality group. This matters. So when we talk to injured workers, be nice. Go back to kindergarten. Hi, my name is. I'm here to help you. I'm gonna be your physical therapist. I'm gonna be your adjuster. I'm gonna help coordinate your benefits. I'm here to help you through this really convoluted system. But I'm your person, we're gonna make some good things happen, let's go. It's amazing to me how many people don't just ask an injured worker how they're doing. Fascinating to me. Now sometimes we don't want to know because we know something's gone wrong and instead we just want to be like, nope, I love conflict, so I like asking these questions because I want to help fix people. Oh, Leo, that's a thing. One of the easiest ways, ask people to tell you 3 pieces of information. This is one of my favorite things. I actually learned this from some physical therapists about 15 years ago, where they would ask their injured humans who would come in from the weekend and say, tell me 3 good things. And this would give them a gauge on if they went out and socialized over the weekend, who are they hanging out with? Did they at least get out of their house and go get a cup of coffee, or did they hear from their employer? It gives you a lot of information about people. Where do they spend their time, their talents, and their treasures? So if you think about what are 3 good things that have happened to you today, well, how would you respond? You can go ahead and write those. Here your rainbow. And then when we look at this from an empathy lens, one of the easiest ways to be successful in workers' compensation is to establish expectations. Hey Joe, I'm gonna be your adjuster. Here's what you can expect from me. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm going to make sure that you get on that road to recovery. You can expect timely payment of your benefits. You can expect we will be making sure your medical bills get paid. In addition, here's what I expect of you. I expect you to call me after every doctor's appointment. If something goes wrong at physical therapy, I need you to tell me. If it's taking too long to schedule your MRI, I need you to call me. There is a mutual level of respect that needs to exist, but we fail to do that during our initial introduction. So how do we set those expectations and accountabilities, and then how do we hold people responsible along the way? So again, if I miss a payment, what do I do then to make sure that Joe feels safe again and can trust me? I did have my adjusters send emails before so that people knew their checks were coming or their ACH was going into their account. Because that helps alleviate that fear of the unknown, and that is what the system is designed around. People don't heal well because they're fearful, because they have no idea what's coming next. This fear of the unknown goes really heavy. And ask questions. It's one of the easiest things to do. If you have no idea what's going on with your injured worker, going back, I need your name, your address, your social security number, your date of birth, your blood type, all the fun stuff that we ask. But hey, why don't you tell me from your lens, how do you think your injury happened? Is there anything you think your employer could have done differently? How can we make this better? And if we're on the employer side, are we asking the right questions? How did this happen? Is there anything that we could do on the employer side that makes this process better? We want to involve you so that this doesn't happen to one of your peers. So what are you looking for when we're talking to injured workers? Because we're trying to alleviate this fear of the unknown. We want to make sure that there aren't any missed payments going on. We want to make sure that bills don't get sent to people's houses. It's amazing to me how many times this happens, and we don't find out until they've gone to collections. Those people are fun to talk to. Also, returning phone calls. This one hits a little personally. 6 weeks. I called every day, or on the same day, for 6 weeks, following up with an email afterwards, and didn't get a response. I spent my life in this industry of making sure good things could happen for other people. Because as a foster child, this is my way of giving back to society, because unforeseen circumstances happen. Children don't choose to be born into that system, just a heads up in case anyone ever wondered. They don't. But we can make every day better for each other by genuinely caring. So you're in the system for a reason. You're here in the work comp industry for a reason. Probably because you care and you like to help people. So just want to remember that. And answering people's questions. There are no dumb questions in this space. This is a hard system to navigate. So how do we help people throughout this? And this is all about our communication, following up, checking in on people weekly, just saying, hey, how are you? And this is where we start to go look at a value of excellence in customer service, going beyond expectations. I don't know that our system does a good job of even meeting expectations. A lot of stuff, a lot of balls fall through the cracks on a regular basis, but these are people's livelihood. These are families that get impacted. Not a claim number, families. So when we start looking at what causes success in workers' compensation, I stand firm on this. 80% of success for the people who are involved in workers' compensation is because you're emotionally intelligent. You're good at what you do, you restore the livelihood of people, and you can connect on that EQ level. At National Work Comp 2 weeks ago, we had a surgeon talking to us about how 20 of his friends had committed suicide over the years. And he absolutely said it was because they disconnect from their patients. And then everybody becomes a robot, a machine. You're here, I need to fix you. Next, you're here, I need to fix you. Next, connecting with people, that emotional intelligence is imperative. And when we start to hack the system of people and we stop caring, we start to treat people like they're machines, we've lost it. We've got to figure out what it is. Everything else, the technical stuff, 20%. You can teach people how to read a statute. You can teach people how to follow a rule. But can you teach people how to be good people? Genuinely just good people. So this is where I ask you, where's your self-awareness? How self-aware are you? Do you know what your tone sounds like when you're working with injured human beings? What language do you use? Are you here always talking about the road to recovery in a positive way, or do we get a little jaded? What about your self-regulation? When you start to go down that negativity route, how do you pull yourself back up? Where's your accountability? If you miss something, do you fall on the sword and just own it? What happens? What about your reflection? Right now, when you look down on your rainbow, are you proud? Are you getting there? I hope you are. And then lastly, how do you lead yourself along this way to make the system better than it was? People want to be seen, heard, acknowledged, and valued, and more importantly, validated. So what do I mean by that? Most of the time, people just want to be heard. They just want somebody to acknowledge what has happened to them. So we look at this from two lenses, active listening and reflective listening. Who's good at these? Because I could go ask your partners or your spouses, and they're going to probably give me a different answer. We can all get better at this. We can all get better at this. But most of the time, when we're doing active listening, it's never about the words. You listen for the tone. You listen for the speech cadence. There's a lot of other factors that go in versus the actual words somebody is saying. A lot of times we aren't in person with them, sometimes we are. If we are a physical therapist or the nurse case manager, we get to see all of those body language cues that the adjusters can't. Sometimes the employers aren't able to see that on a regular basis either. And why that communication is so important is because there could be something else going on. But on the adjusting side, we can just validate somebody by repeating or echoing what they're saying. Sometimes they just want to vent. Do you ever have those days? My best friend and I voice and I go back and forth way too much. But most of the time she's like, hey, thanks, I just needed to vent. We just want to feel validated. Happens all the time. Next value, excellence in business strategy and strategic perspective. So I teach business strategy. It's the capstone at Drake in the business school, and I love it because we talk about effective business strategy, and I use the rainbow approach. What's an organization's mission? What's their vision? How are we going to get there? What are the objectives? What are your checkpoints along that rainbow? What are you going to look for at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180? What does that look like? How do you define success? But the values are the lens in which you're making decisions. So now I want you to think of 3 values that you hold true to yourself, and I want you to write those down near your rainbow. What are 3 values that are important to you? Because that is the lens in which you should be making your decisions. Business strategy and workers' compensation is to restore the livelihood of people because it's cost-effective in every way possible. It's the ethical thing to do. Corporate social responsibility applies to this. Human capital development. It's a financially sound objective strategy to get your people back into their work. It increases employee engagement. And at the end of the day, let's go back to kindergarten, it's simply the right thing to do. Amazing. So now let's look at some integrity and teamwork and leadership, our cornerstones for success. All right, workers' compensation and return to work. It is the fundamental core to get people back to work, back to life. If we start focusing on the life part, the work part ends up solving itself. But there's a lot of times that people won't return their employees unless it's half day or full day. And I would like you to start challenging that perspective. If we can get somebody back to work an hour a couple times a week, that is going to make them start to take care of themselves. They have to get dressed, they have to brush their teeth, they have to brush their hair, they have to get themselves back into a capacity. When I was a chief risk officer, I had a gentleman who broke his leg in 8 spots in an oil field. And we brought him back to work 3 days a week, 1 hour, to get him out of his house. And he would come hang out with some of our office people. I don't know exactly what they did, I just asked them to get him in, bring him in. But then he got to be around his community again. His healing was phenomenal. 8 fractures is not really leg injury. But the back to work thing made a huge difference. He did not want to be home. Not only did he have his kids there were a couple of grandkids. It was a lot. So we got to get people in. We got to get them to take care of themselves, get them back into a routine. So what's this influence that we all have? 80,000 people. You guys are in work comp, we probably got way more than that. How do we redefine this excellence and standards of healthcare and claims administration? What are we supposed to be doing? What do we do to make this better? We have to start building relationships that remind us why we're here. What's your why? What's your mission? What does that left cloud say? What is your mission? And how are you going to leave this place? That vision of yours. How do you define success? So when we start looking at this and we think about this, I've got a couple examples, I'm not gonna give all of them. I'm talking too long. John's probably my favorite. So John's our gentleman that broke his leg in 8 spots. But when we wanted to rethink the system, this is a pretty egregious injury. So our safety director went and met John and his wife at the hospital, and they had dinner together. John and his wife, and our safety director and his wife. They did that twice. It made a huge difference. Not only is it us as an organization showing up that we genuinely care, also hospital food is terrible. We also sent me home that first night. There are little things that matter that help people feel validated, that my employer actually cares about me. They genuinely care what happens for my outcome and my best interest. Because again, these are people that have been on our teams. We've hired them to come be a part of our circle. And yet sometimes when people say work comp, we're done. All right, so again, what's your why? The number one way we can start improving claims in healthcare is to do what we say we're going to do. So again, what's your why? What's your mission look like? So why is there this gap? A lot of times when an injury occurs, people are sent to HR. I'm so sorry, I just didn't learn the parts. But we do this. We're like, hey, go talk to HR. I actually just had a student that had this happen to him this week. And then we have restrictions that are issued, but we don't actually sit down and say, hey, supervisor, hey, injured worker, do you understand that you can't ask him to do things outside of this? Do you understand that this is your body and you need to take responsibility? So if she asks you to do something out of this, you say, no, that's not within my restrictions, and then have everybody sign off on it. Easy way to do it, we don't do that way. And then we remove people from this human connection element. Super easy though, right? So who matters most? That direct leader ends up being imperative for trying to get people back in that environment. And when we see a lot of malingering that we talk about being super fraudulent, a lot of times there's something going on at work, and then we hear, well, he was a terrible employee anyway, and then you get a copy of the HR file and it's empty. Because workers' compensation is not a remedy for poor hiring decisions. 2 of the most important attributes. And adjusters, I would consider you a leader for every injured worker on your desk. You've got to know your people. What's going on with them? And how do you continue to use communication to inspire those around you for clarity, alignment, and purpose? What's important to them? We had a woman at one point who had a shoulder injury, and she was 70, wanted to get back to the golf course where she golfed with her grandkids. So we asked her to start putting up pictures of her golfing with her grandkids pre-injury on her refrigerator, on her door when she would exit to go to her vehicle, and on her mirror in her bathroom. So that days after physical therapy, when she was really sore, she remembered her why. Because if you can get people on board with getting them back to life, the back to work piece falls into place. So we've got to look at these small moments that make a difference. So aside from doing what we say we're going to do, you got to remember you guys are so important. The most important piece of this, your expertise, your communication, and how you drive the results. So then we've got to create these little small moments that remind us to feel and help establish that trust. Where do you start? I'm a huge fan of sending cards. Nobody sends US mail. No one sends US mail anymore. Except if you live in Iowa, all the political ads are starting to come back. Hey. But establish weekly check-ins. Just, hey, how are you? And doing it regularly. Increasing that communication and giving that sense of transparency can make all the difference. Focus on those psychosocial issues. We've all got at least 7 other things on a regular basis. If you're a mom, you've probably got 12, maybe more. We've got to provide education that's consumable. Not, hey Tanya, we're going to send you for an 85-39 exam. What is that? An independent medical evaluation. What is that? It's what we're going to send you to. That's not consumable information. Be transparent. Hey, we're going to send you for a second opinion because we don't agree with what the doctor said. Tell people up front what their expectations are. Hey, they're proposing a surgery that we don't usually see in workers' compensation. We have to get a second opinion. All right, it's not going to be quick. These doctors take 45, 60 days. Set yourself up for success with that. Be honest, be transparent. The The words you use matter. The words you use to describe the injured human beings in which you serve absolutely say everything about you and nothing about the system. Remember that. You have a lot of power with that. Give people a vision. You have your vision right in front of you. Help people cultivate theirs in the moments that they can't remember. And it's time we rethink that return to work part. If you're going to draft a card, you don't have to put too much effort into it. I personally think they should not have memorabilia on them, but sometimes employers want to have their logo on it. If you are drafting a letter from the employer standpoint, if you don't know what's going on with your injured worker, there's a problem. So if something falls through the cracks and they're not telling you, that's an issue. We've got to have those streamlines of communication or we can't fix things. For nurse case managers, you guys are that ripple. You are the universal healers. We're automatically thought of as a healer. Remember, you are the boots on the ground. You see and hear everything that we cannot if we're behind the desk. You are that extension of recovery, care, compassion, and concern. I'm sure there's enough to get you jaded, but let's remember your why. All right, I have a ton of these, but we can just send these out. I've got ideas up the wazoo for how we make the system better. All the time. Transparent communication, caseloads are on there. Just gonna laugh at that one for a second. Just tons of things. How often do we talk to those injured workers? How often are we encouraging the employer to talk to those injured workers? What does that look like? Immediate steps for action on the employer side, and I want you to think about this, especially if you have any influence in HR. We do open enrollment every year, right? Everyone knows open enrollment. We've got to renew our insurance and qualify for our benefits. Why do we talk about work comp at the same time? If you are an employee of ours, and you are injured, if it's personal health, you go here. If it's work comp, you go here. Either way, you're our employee and we care about you. Where it happens, it's either going here or it's not. I realized this when I was on the employer side and had a captain. I was paying for this either way. So why don't we just do it at the same time? If you need pharmacy on the personal health side, you go here. If it's work comp, here's a personal form. I don't know why we don't do that. We're just open enrollment, just having those conversations on a regular basis. Easy things. And if we started to do work comp training on a regular basis, hey, here's what happens if somebody gets injured, it's not so weird. The number one phone call I got as a risk manager was, what do I do? So-and-so got injured. So why do we not know? If you are a leader of people, you should know what happens if one of your employees gets injured. So what kind of quarterly reminders could we give? Could we do annual training? We do harassment training, sexual harassment training, phishing training, you name it. And what do those expectations look like? Again, looking at open enrollment. And remembering our circle of control. What is your why? How much influence do you have? And what value are you providing in the work comp system right now? What is your circle of control? And what's your why? Because the little moments are the ones that make the big moments.
Thank you for everything you've done in my career.
I have no idea who's coming. Like, literally, no idea. Hello.
Hi, Dwayne. Hello.
Hello. How you doing, brother?
Pretty good, and yourself? It's been about 12 years since I last seen you. I come from an area where not too many people make it.
It was always my dream that I'd get the chance to go to college, but we just didn't have the money.
You mean so much to us, and my brother Joaquin loved you from the beginning. He passed away in Parkland on February 14th. He was one of the 17 victims.
10 days before Christmas, our house burned down and we lost everything. It was one of the lowest points in my life.
Hey, Dwayne.
How you doing, Mom?
You were the joy of my life. But I was dropping the ball. That day that I just couldn't do it no more was the day that I was gonna have to turn myself in. And I seen the tears just fall from your eyes. Your mama went down a road, Dwayne, that I didn't ever think I'd come back from. But on that road, I noticed you kept showing up. And you'll come and see about me. And Dwayne, because you believe in me. When I got out of prison, I was a different woman.
We received a phone call. Would you mind if Dwayne Wade take you and the family on a shopping spree? It just meant the world to me that you were there for us at this time.
Thank you.
You became our hero.
A lot of the words that you said hit a spark and kind of changed where I was going.
Without you and your full tuition scholarship, none of this would have been possible.
You're not Wade, the basketball player, the legend. You're the human being that took the time and on his own wrote my brother's name on his shoe, and you cared.
When you bought your mama that church, you don't even understand the lives that you changed. So I don't have a jersey, but I brought you this.
I don't have a jersey to trade with you, but I definitely have this, the blazer that I wore to my first job interview.
My cap and gown from graduation.
This is important because Joaquin wore this in his last championship. My family wanted you to have it.
Please don't forget my brother, Joaquin. Having you as a role model has made all the difference.
One of the special robes that you gave me, purple symbolized royalty, and you are royal in everybody's life that you've touched.
You completely changed the course of my life.
I know my brother is with you always.
It wouldn't have been possible to be here if it wasn't for you.
I am more proud of the man you have become than the basketball player. You are bigger than basketball.
All right, I want you to flip over your piece of paper. And I want you to write, I am a game changer. And I want you to think of one word that represents the value you provide in the work comp system. How do you want to lead people? I mean, I don't expect you to go buy a church, but you are bigger than insurance and workers' compensation. The roles that you play are so important. I want you to remember that. You're going to influence 80,000 people in your lifetime. How are you going to lead them? So the future can be better tomorrow than it is today, and I believe you all have the power to do so. So with that, I'll be Thank you.